Sachaqa Talk, Artist Residency in the Amazon Rainforest, Peru. Hi, I'm Trina Brammer, and with us here today is Canadian painter Erin Loree. In the second part, we will talk more about Peruvian plant medicine, healing through painting, and also Erin Loree's colour theory. So I know that a big part of your journey is the Peruvian plant medicine, and I know that you're quite open and honest about that, as it's integral to your artist journey, really. And what I would like to talk about the most, only because I am nosy on my behalf, is the healing that you had with and the plants that you drank with Don Pepe or Donias. I know that it's a long story, but what are the highlights of that healing? And also, I know that you recently did a very powerful ayahuasca. Was it that in Hawaii? And I know that has opened you up again. I think maybe it has it kind of like followed on from the Pepe Aldana's kind of chakra opening, because I know that after that your communication chakra opened, which is something that happened with the treatment with Pepe Aldana's with me. You know, that the communication chakra completely opened, and I was like, I've got to tell everybody. And part of these podcasts is my healing with Don Pepe and the plant medicine of like this having this need that comes from the universe to communicate what's going on in the world, and like, I know all these amazing artists and I want to share it. It's like I need to do it, or if I don't do it then I'm going to burst or something. So I just wondered how that journey was for you. And I know that it started right at the beginning when you first came, but I think that I would like to hear more about the second chapter, like which began with Don Pepe in Yurimaguas.
So, so I totally know what you mean about the clearing and the healing of the chakras, and then everything changes. And I'm so happy you're doing these podcasts because, as you said, like I feel like I just recently um, had my throat chakra opened up and healed, and that I think that happened in Costa Rica last year when I worked with ayahuasca. But with Pepe and Yurimaguas, that, oh my gosh, that journey is, when I think about it, it like gives me goosebumps, makes me feel a little bit ill and also so grateful at the same time. Um, that journey with him was all about opening my heart and healing my heart. So before I came to Peru, that was 2017. In that year, so I went on a trip with my best friend, Caitlin Chismore, to Costa Rica. And we actually were supposed to go on a road trip through the South American deserts. But our car broke down like a few days before we were supposed to leave. So Caitlin was really distraught about it, and I'm pretty open about stuff like that. Like I totally believe that everything happens for a reason. So I was like, okay, well, I'm kind of down to go anywhere. I'm down to have an adventure. So I asked Caitlin where else she would want to go, and she said Costa Rica. So we booked a flight that day and left maybe like a week later. And what I realized is, and then after she went back to Canada after Costa Rica, I continued back to Peru because Peru, and in San Roque and the art center and the jungle is where I feel called to again and again. Like I feel like it's like my spirit home, and it heals me, it challenges me, it shakes up my life, and it inspires me immensely creatively. So that's just that's my place, and I'm so happy that I've discovered that, and I'm so happy that you were a part of that and continue to be. But what I realized when I got back there to Peru is like Costa Rica was definitely exactly what I needed. It was what Caitlin and I both needed, and it was beautiful healing, and but it was kind of soft and cushiony. And then when I got to Peru, I realized, the jungle is this like hard, tough place and that awaits you if you're ready to go deeper. So I was like, okay, I had forgotten how tough it feels, especially when you first arrive and you haven't quite surrendered to it yet. So there's this like between Costa Rica and Peru was like night and day, the contrast of those two places for me. Um, and so I didn't really know that I was even going to work with ayahuasca again when I went to go see you at the art center. And then when you're like, oh, this is perfect timing because these elders from the jungle are coming to Pepe's center, which is called Dos Mundos, which means two worlds. And you said the elders are coming and they're brewing their own ayahuasca and we're going to do some ceremonies with them. And these men were, I think, like, so I heard like 125 years old or something, and they seemed like they were 80, maybe at the most. It was wild. Um, so, you and me and Ellen, and I forget the other woman's name, we all traveled to Yurimaguas by car on this winding death road, as you remember. And those first two or three ceremonies with the elders were really, really, really tough because it was a way of preparing ayahuasca and drinking ayahuasca that I wasn't used to based on my previous experience 5 years prior to that. So the way that these elders cooked it was it's normally the ayahuasca tea is made with primarily two different plants. So there's the vine, ayahuasca vine, and then a leaf, which is chacruna. And chacruna has if I'm getting this right, an enzyme inhibitor. So that enzyme would usually prevent your body from absorbing the DMT. So it would prevent you from having like these psychedelic visions. But I believe that their brew was made without chacruna, and so was Pepe's. But so I don't think it was more about like a physical purging. It was more about cleaning the body energetically. So, but for me, I still had tons and tons and tons of visions. Like probably some of the most powerful visions I've ever had drinking ayahuasca were during my time with Pepe. Um, and I remember, when I got there, when I got to Pepe's center, um, I was coming out of a chapter of feeling like what I can only describe is a feeling of like losing control, slowly descending into chaos in my mind. And I felt totally disconnected from myself and from my art and from the people in my life. And, I think I was trying to find ways to cope with that destructive, unhealthy patterns. Um, so I think that, and I'm a firm believer that, the medicine calls you. Like you never have to go looking for it. It will tell you when it's time to drink it again. And, my winding up in Peru was just exactly that. Like it was honestly destiny because my work with Pepe was some of the hardest I've ever done. Um, like I said, the way that he prepared ayahuasca and the way that you drink it, like during the day, sitting on a bench, like you're not drinking it at night and then lying down on a cushiony mat and having these visions. You're actively participating in the healing process, in the purging, in the cleaning, and it's hard work and you have to really want to be there. Um, and so with Pepe, it was like you know, a daily struggle, but it was something that I knew that I had to go through. And so um, Pepe does these alignments with people that come to the center, and he basically assesses your chakras and he works on balancing them and opening them and clearing them. And I'm not quite sure how to describe what this alignment is, but it feels like it's a combination of a few different like therapeutic modalities of like body work. So like um oh God, I don't even know how to describe it. But a lot of it is very painful and like sometimes you'll hear people screaming in the room where he's doing the alignments because he is so intuitive and he can feel your energy and traumas and wounds and everything about you and your past and what you're holding on to and what you're carrying so well that he knows exactly where to work on the body. And so it's often really uncomfortable, cry a lot, scream, sweat. Uh, you might have like laughter, like euphoria. But then, so after he did my alignment, and this is basically to assess what needs to be healed and what needs to be worked on with plant medicines, ayahuasca and other medicinal plants as well. And so after my alignment, I was expecting just to go back to the art center after these 3 ceremonies with the elders. Um, but then the alignment happened, and he wrote some notes in the book, and basically, and this shocked me. So he said, um, he said, I normally don't tell anybody to stay here for this long or to stay here at all, that they have to stay here, but like you have to stay here. And that alone was like kind of enough for me to really, like it woke me up. And I was like, well, I didn't plan on being here for very long. Like I don't have time to do a dieta, which is like a period of time where you have a very strict diet and you're working with medicinal plants and you're cleaning your body and your mind and your spirit, energetically and physically. I was like, I don't have time. I have a commission to do at home. I have work to do. I have a show. Like, I just don't have time. And I was really stressed out about it. And he's like, no, like, you have to stay. Otherwise, you're going to develop. And I looked at the sheet of paper and it said fibromyalgia, which I know it's like I think it's an autoimmune disorder, but it's very vague. But there are symptoms that, anyway, this long story short, when I read that, it brought back all of these memories of when I was in high school. I was 15 years old, and I remember overnight something happened to my body where I started to feel kind of sore in the evening, and then I woke up in the middle of the night and I could not move my joints. My entire body was like locked and in excruciating pain. And I called to my mom and she came and helped me, and like basically I can't remember how long this lasted, but it lasted for at least a couple of months, but I couldn't function. My mom had to dress me, brush my teeth, help me eat, and I went to tons and tons of specialists and all over the place, and the only conclusion that they came to was that I had fibromyalgia. So all these memories came flooding back, and I told Pepe, I was like, "Oh, that's weird that you say that because like I had this experience as a teenager." And he said, yeah, like if you don't heal your body and mind now and you don't get rid of the stresses that you're carrying, this is going to happen to you. And I was like, oh my God. And I just felt very disturbed and very scared. And I was like, no, but I have to go home and paint. And he said, listen, you won't be painting for much longer if you don't work with these plant medicines and heal. And I was like, okay, done. Sign me up. So I just ended up staying at his center for about a month. Um, and like I said, it was some of the hardest work I've ever done. One of the precursors to continuing to work with ayahuasca with Pepe is this. We worked with ohe, which is this tree that is poisonous to the human body, but if taken in very, very small amounts, can be very healing and cleansing, and it heals the gut. And it's basically a preparatory medicine for the ayahuasca, to help the ayahuasca go deeper in the system. So, for example, we all had to wake up at 4 a.m. one night, and then we drank this like white liquid that was the ohe, and then we had to wait maybe an hour for that to absorb partially into our body. And then we had to drink liters and liters and liters and liters of water to induce vomiting, to induce purging. And we had to continue drinking water and purge until there was no more white, like sap or liquid coming out of us. So it was like, this is what I mean by it's work physically and emotionally, and it pushes you to your absolute limits. um, so yeah, like basically it took until about 8:30 or 9 in the morning for me to be finished with that medicine. And then it was so tough. It was so tough. And the ayahuasca ceremonies at Pepe's were very similar. You would drink the ayahuasca sitting up on the bench and then wait about 45 minutes and then drink liters and liters and liters and liters of water to induce purging. And no matter what, I always had visions. And like one of the most profound experiences that I had, that this changed the course of my life during one of his ceremonies, um, which I was so surprised that I had these clear visions and messages. So basically, what started to happen was my heart started to open. Um, I could just feel it opening. And I started to connect to each of my family members one by one. Their faces would appear in my like line of sight, in my like my third eye, in my vision, with my eyes closed. And I connected to each one of their hearts one by one, and I saw exactly, I felt and saw their pain, their burdens, the healing that they needed. And it was like this really, really, really intense connection that I had with each one. And the connecting of our hearts was like a huge, huge healing aspect for me. And then I saw that until this moment, ever since that I had taken ayahuasca, or worked with ayahuasca 5 years before, since then, there had been all of this stuff that had accumulated over my heart, like thick, hard, encrusted layers of like other people's beliefs and opinions and like untruths and like insecurities, and all of this stuff that wasn't true to me had basically encased my heart, and I was not able to access it. And the ayahuasca showed me that it's, first of all, ayahuasca is so intelligent, and it works with every single person exactly where they're at on their journey, exactly where they're at in their conscious, emotional, spiritual development, and it gives you exactly what you need in that moment to move forward. So it's an intelligence that you just cannot explain, but it humbles you so much every single time you'd work with it. Um, so anyways, it showed me that it in an literally in a split second, it burst through and removed all of those layers around my heart. And I got the message that I'm supposed to go back to Peru or someplace, wherever I'm called to, every 2 years to have the cleaning that the medicine does, spiritual maintenance, so that those layers don't become so severely uh, encrusted and caked over that I can't access my heart. And I saw that everyone experiences this. We all absorb and take on and carry the things that are not ours, the things that do not serve us, the things that are not aligned with our highest good and truths. And I was just like crying my eyes out going through this. And I also saw that the next vision that I saw was that I had been carrying all of my past baggage. And I was just this tiny, tiny person carrying behind me like a parachute full of stuff, like a giant parachute. I was like lugging it along, carrying it with me. And I saw that that's what I've been carrying for years. And so I made the conscious decision in that vision to turn around and snip the cords of that baggage, and I let it go, and I consciously let it all go. And I thanked it for what it gave me, and then I just let it go. Um, and then the next part of that ceremony it showed me my future self. And this feeling was unlike any feeling I had ever felt. It was So I felt the future self. She was radiant and happy and joyful and light and healthy and abundant and creative. And I knew that she was me, I was her. If time is not linear, then I am her and I can access her. And all I have to do is, and I was shown the path to get to her. I was shown the exact path to take in my real physical life, how to become this person who I already was in some dimension. And basically, that path was to take care of my body, clean the vessel, so eat healthy, drink tons of water, start a yoga practice, breathe, meditate, all of these things that and appear to, they're kind of common sense, but they actually take a lot of work and discipline to put into action. But this is the thing, like we have to be light and open enough so that we can allow like the energies of the cosmos or the universe or whatever it is to be channeled through us, to work through us. Um, so that was a really, really powerful ceremony for me. And in another really powerful transformative ceremony, so something I've been kind of open with in the public as well is that deal with severe menstrual pain, which feels what happens is it feels like contractions. I think from I've talked to a lot of people that have had children, and what I describe is what it feels like to have the contractions when you're in labor, um, which is excruciatingly painful. Like I'm not sure, I've never been diagnosed with like endometriosis or dysmenorrhea or anything, and I don't really exactly know. I mean, I've had ultrasounds and nothing showed up, so I'm not sure what it is, if it's just like, if it's even physical or if it's all energetic and emotional, and if it's, the release of tension or whatever it is. This is what I deal with and I've dealt with for my entire life. It's very disruptive, and I'm slowly starting to learn how to be with the pain in a really profound way than I ever had before. I used to run away from the pain, avoid the pain, struggle through it, and it obviously made everything worse. And now I breathe. I've learned to breathe, and I've learned to feel it all of it. And so at Pepe Center, pretty much every time I drank ayahuasca, I would get menstrual pain even without having my period. And so this was wild because they always say that the medicine goes where it needs to go. So it heals in priority what you need healing, or where you need healing. So I knew that it was going there and it was doing work on me. And then in one of the ceremonies, I had severe menstrual pain, and then I saw these white angelic spirits like swimming around in this dark water, caressing my like fallopian tubes. And then all of a sudden, these spirits, these like spirit guides, angelic beings, started swimming upwards, and I saw this really tall cylindrical tower against like a dark sky backdrop. And and there was a winding staircase going up the tower. So I saw these little white spirits swimming up and up and up and up this tower, around the tower, around the staircase, like faster and faster and faster. And when they got to the top of the tower, this tower just shot out this beam of golden light. And then as these spirits were rising up this tower faster and faster, my vibration in my body was raising higher and higher. And to the point where I felt like I was like laughing, and I almost couldn't handle it. It was so high. The frequency felt so high. And then so I was also raising my body to meet these beings at the top of the tower. So as soon as I reached the top of the tower, the beam of golden light from that tower connected with my third eye and shot this golden liquid into my third eye, and it started to sort of drip and melt down into my body. It went all the way down into my fingertips, to my toes, and then it washed out my body. So it was like this golden liquid came into my body, coated the inside, and then washed itself out. And it was it was so powerful, this vision and the sensation. And so I feel like this medicine is so powerful in a sense that, and especially as an artist too, as a visual artist, like this comes into my work. Like I don't paint the visions that I see. Like I'm not a visionary artist, but the sensations and the transformations that occur are always being translated into my work on some level. So yeah, what I just love about this medicine is that it continues to work on you in a very clear way. And the way that I see it is, once it's in your body, once you have a relationship with it, that relationship develops and it never leaves you. And so I'm so grateful for it, because it's, again, like I've only just started to open up about it recently, but it's been a huge, crucial part of my artistic and personal journey.
Thank you so much, Erin, for sharing such a personal account of that experience. I really appreciate it as well, because I love to hear, how people heal. And it's amazing how these visions that you have, which are usually, like you said, really, really sacred with Pepe, there's no confusion there. The visions hit the mark, they hit the spot, the place that needs healing.
And which what is lovely about the visions is then we carry those visions, don't we, and remind ourselves of the healing and what was said through those visions. So that's another powerful aspect of the visual diary of our experience.
So, what are you learning from the painting? I mean, obviously, you're learning about how the composition communicates something, or the color is speaking about something that's inside of you. But what is it that the painting is teaching you? Because I mean, I always work like that, you know, that each painting of mine is teaching me something, and sometimes I just have to get it out. It's not about what it looks like, and it's not necessarily about how other people see it. It's more about I have to get this painting out because it's trying to tell me something, and I want to know what that is, what that lesson is. So I'd like to know what generally are you talking about when you're speaking about a painting teaching you something?
When I came back from working with ayahuasca last year, which was in 2019, the first painting that I made when I got back was this piece called The In Between, and it's a 50-inch by 40-inch oil painting on panel. And what it looks like is a rainbow river of light pouring down from top to bottom with these like darker silhouettes and forms kind of framing this rainbow river. And then in the background, you can see maybe like a farmland landscape. There's some green trees, green grass, and then the sky is very warm, and there are some like yellow ochres and burnt siennas in there to contrast the like very highly saturated pinks and blues and purples and greens that you see in the river. Um, and after I made this painting, well, first of all, this painting, something about the act of creating it healed me in a very deep and profound way. And I'll just explain a little bit more about what this painting means in a minute. But I thought about the very first painting that I made after coming back from doing Pepe's work. And that painting, oddly enough, this is so funny. It's the exact same size, but it's acrylic. There's an acrylic underpainting, and then I've layered oil paint on top and then scraped some away, and I've drawn back into the oil paint to reveal the acrylic underpainting below. But this painting also looks like either a river or a tree in the center of the image, and it looks like the top and the bottom are both connecting with reflecting worlds. So this painting is called Two Worlds. And there's also a black frame in the foreground. So it looks like you're sort of peering through this bush or keyhole looking at this landscape. And what I found so interesting about these two paintings is that without realizing that I had painted a very similar image in attempts to process what I had just experienced, the titles of them are also very similar. So Two Worlds. That's obviously referencing the name of the center, Dos Mundos, and then the in between. So I think there's something there about being between two realities or two dimensions and sort of like shifting between the two, and recognizing that there is more than one reality that we're experiencing at one time. So I'm interested to see what the next paintings are going to be after I continue working with this medicine, because there's clearly a trend happening here. And going back to what the in between means to me, again, it was the first painting I made after coming back from Costa Rica after a really intense personal journey of healing. And at the same time, I was reading Rudolf Steiner's book, How to Know Higher Worlds, and he described this seed meditation as a way to bring the human soul into a conscious relationship with the spiritual dimensions of life. So I'll just read the part of this chapter where he mentions the seed meditation. So he says, "We place before us a mature plant. First, we immerse ourselves in the thought, a time will come when this plant will wither and decay. Everything I see will no longer exist, but the plant will have produced seeds, and these will become new plants. Thus, once again, I become aware that something I cannot see lies hidden in what I can see. And so, also that same week, a friend's boyfriend had passed away from a brain tumor that had gone undetected until 10 months before that, but had been growing since birth. And when I made this painting, I was thinking about that narrow space between the process of becoming, flourishing, and blossoming, and the process of dying, withering, and decaying, and fading. So that in-between state is really as thin as a razor's edge. And I thought of the eternal cycles of life and death and all of that magnificent energy that takes new forms and creates new life and love again and again. And then building off of the wisdom and lessons that I gained from that, from making that painting, um, what I've been doing during this quarantine recently is that I've been, for the first time ever, deciding to paint over old paintings. And I've always had a huge aversion to painting over textured surfaces. I think I might have mentioned that. But something just clicked in me a couple of months ago, and I started pulling out all of these pieces that I had originally thought were failed, and I had just put them away to collect dust, basically. But what I realized is that these paintings were never even finished. Like I thought that they were failed, but they were just waiting for me to reach this moment where I understood that there are many, many different things happening in the studio and in our minds and our consciousness that are developing at different rates and different paces and in different ways. So I realized that there's such a value in building upon what was there before. So like finding new meaning, new colors, new light, and bringing certain aspects of the piece forth and pushing some back. And so it was really about seeing my practice and the work with new eyes, and seeing new possibilities for the work. And I realized that my practice is much more cyclical than I thought. And so these older paintings are coming back into my present life, and they're teaching me so much. And, I think there's always, whenever I have a revelation in my painting process, it always lines up with a new understanding about, or like there's always a synchronistic event between what's happening externally and within me. So I think that this new understanding of what my paintings can be now really comes from my new understanding of my relationships with people in my life. So like my partner, my family, my friends. And I think it has a lot to do with time and allowing things to unfold as they will, without force and without pressure, without expectations. And then inevitably things will change and there'll be distance and you'll come back together and there'll be ebbs and flows. And so I'm learning that you can experience profound transformation and renewal in relationships again and again. And it really has a lot to do with my new understanding of commitment and what it means to have faith. And so I think painting is only valuable insofar as it can teach you about life. But then life teaches you about art. And so there's like this question of like the chicken or the egg, what came first? And so as you change, the art changes. And as the art changes, it changes you. So like there are no separate processes, and everything leads to the next thing. And so, for someone like me who's committed to growth and confronting aspects of myself that I dislike and distrust and don't want to see, you realize that nothing can stay the same forever, and something deeper than me does stay the same. And I realized through these paintings and through my current relationships is that the thing that stays the same is love. And that's like the eternal, unchanging structure and energy beneath everything. And so, like, I always thought that I was drawn to novelty in art and in relationships. Like, I never stuck around long enough to see something through or to reach new depths in it. And so, but it turns out, and this is just the other side of the coin, that I was actually just afraid of commitment. And so I was afraid of commitment because I was afraid of finding out what was really there or what wasn't really there. And so I think I was scared that the magic wouldn't be there, and I actually had just preferred not to find out. So I was always moving from one thing to the next and never going deep. And so this new work is healing me so deeply because I now have this desire for depth. And I also came across this phrase, this Latin phrase called multum non multa, which means much, not many, which is all about um, penetrating layers, going deep, as opposed to moving and accumulating superficially. So that's where I'm at right now in my life and in my practice. So I'm really excited to see how this new, I guess, way of seeing carries through into the future work.
So I know that you say that you've not studied colour theory, but you have a colour theory in your own mind. So how does your colour theory work? What are you looking for with the cold colours and the warm colours? What are the relationship with those colours? What's your relationship with the primary colours and the secondary colours? What is it with the colour? What is your language for colours? Which colours are you always picking up? And what do the colours mean to you, you know? Are you remembering childhood? Are you remembering what you've seen? Are your colours taken from something that you've seen in that day? Or are they all just colours coming from feelings? Do you see colour like music, that there are different notes of a musical instrument that is vibrating something that's inside of you, you know? Do you feel that the colours are representational to what you're feeling inside? Or do you think that the colours are trying to heal you, to elevate your vibration? I'd like to know about your colour theory. I think that we'd all like to learn about that because obviously colour is your thing. I know that you also made a series that were in black and white, and I know that that was an emotional series for you, actually. So could you talk about this black and white series that you made, from being a colorist to going into black and white as well, and to just talk about, like, how did it feel to go black and white? Like, if you cannot express yourself through color, how did that change your relationship with the paintings?
Yeah, you're right. Even though I haven't studied any color theory um, much or in a very, very long time, I do have a color theory. Um, but I primarily, I have like a deep, deep love affair um, with color, and I'm using color to do a few different things. So one is I use it to create tension, so contrasting complementary colors and warm and cool colors, and therefore creating vibrations and energy, and also to create a sense of light in the painting, or luminosity. Um, I think of light as synonymous with life, and because I want my paintings to feel alive, the quality of light in the painting is always a main concern. And um, so I'm thinking about color. There's different ways that I use color. So I can use color in thin layers of transparencies or built up thick impasto um, globs of different hues. And so, like, light literally interacts with the pigments differently depending on how I'm using the paint. Like, sometimes I'll paint soft halos of gradients of color, and sometimes I'll scrape and white paint away and let the white of the panel shine through. So it looks as if the painting is emanating light from within. So yeah, so my choice of colors is pretty primal. Like, I'll often use whatever I have lying around, and the way that I build my paintings through color is intuitively through like responding to what I'm seeing. So for example, if I start with a white panel and I lay down a few marks of like pink, then I'm going to respond to the white and the pink. And then I continue to move forward, responding to greater and greater complex relationships of color. And so I'm also always influenced by what's around me. Like I think I mentioned that I don't use references or keep source material around. So the colors in my own work inform the colors that I use. And I've I've looked through photos on my phone and noticed that I take a lot of process shots of my work. So every time I make a painting, I I looked at the photos that I had taken or photos I had screenshotted before the painting, and I realized that all of those palettes fed into the work. So I realized I have to be really careful what I'm looking at and what I'm surrounding myself with, because the environment and what I'm seeing is so intimately related to what comes through the work. Um, but so I mentioned in the series Inner Strangers, I think this is like the best example of the reason why I use these bright, vivid, high-keyed colors. Um, my work tends to deal with often, and not always, but often, and it has in the past a lot, dealt with heavier emotions and subject matter. So my use of color has always been um, a way to keep things light and playful and approachable. And I also think that in translating something within yourself that feels heavy and feels dark, by translating that emotion, that feeling into a painting, transmuting that energy somehow, and then creating something that is actually brighter, it's transforming that thing. And I think that that's always been my intention. And I also like I tend to need uplifting, so that's why I paint work that uplifts and elevates through color. And so I'm always painting what I need. And I think people respond to the work because they feel that in some way. And they can probably also pick up on and sense the complexity that's within that work. Like I've had a lot of people criticize my work for being too all over, highly saturated. Um, and I think that they just assume that I maybe am using color in a more immature way. Um, and that was hard for me to deal with for a number of years. And I think I internalized their criticisms and opinions and suggestions. And even to the point where, I created a series called Shadow of a Hole, which was the monochromatic series, the black and white series, because I wanted to see if I really was using color as a crutch, if I really did need to use color. And so I decided to create a series of paintings where I used a chromatic black plus white. So I mixed the blacks myself in a number of different ways with different brands of paint and different colors. But I never tested the black before I used it in the painting. So each painting was unique in temperature and hue, and I love that about it. And I felt like even though the paintings appeared to be monochromatic, they were like in fact full of color. And it was a really interesting exercise to learn about eliciting an emotional response in me and in the viewer without the use of color and its associations. So it became more about how I applied the paint and the image and the surface of the painting. I had to rely and work with those elements to create meaning and to yeah. So anyway, it was an interesting exercise, but it really reinforced the fact that I love color and I want to continue working with color, and I use color because it energizes me. So I'm a very drastic person, and I think that's why, I don't I I might gravitate towards other people's work that is more that where they're using more naturalistic colors or it's more subdued or more moody, but for me, like it's just a natural expression of I guess, my inner world. So color is very important to me. And I think that, you know, as I was mentioning, like I'm using color because I need it. Because in the past, I think I had a tendency to overindulge in the darkness. So I was painting these like moody, strange, dark paintings. But in 2012, when I decided to move away from that work and decided to explore color in a more free and open way, I see that as I was trying to pull myself out of that darkness and trauma that I was a kid. Like that, all of that stuff that I was processing through my work, I realized um, I was giving energy to it. And so what I knew that I needed to do, which ended up being through color, is to transmute those energies and those memories and those feelings, those emotions. And so color plays a key role in bringing that out. Um, And also, the way that I use color now is exactly the way that I used to use color as a kid, which I think most kids are just absolutely free and liberal with their use of color. And so, as a kid, you tend to create these like magical worlds where, there are like these rainbows and beings and suns and moons and flowers and everything. And as a kid, I think you perceive everything with heightened senses. Um, and I think watching a lot of cartoons as a kid, like Fantasia, um, was a huge, huge inspiration for me. I used to watch that almost every day. And anyway, I also think that, when people look at my work, even though it's bright and it's colorful, um, I think anyone who's sensitive enough to my work can tell that it's not just happy and light. It's not superficial. It's not one-dimensional. And there is a heaviness in it too. And that's also accomplished through my use of material. So there is, I always want the paintings to feel through color and through my handling of material as if they are both heavy and light, spirit and matter. Um, so they are always communicating different dimensions and states of being at once. So my relationship to color is obviously very complex, and it reflects where I am at and what I am trying to move through or heal or uh, come to terms with, or something like that. So, but I also experiment a lot with color, and I have panels lying around all the time, and that I use leftover paint that I've scraped off of old paintings to make what I call leftover paintings. So these paintings are just inherently more muddier and subdued because they're made with all of the leftover paint that's been mixed up and it's been scraped off and like put on a palette. And I love these paintings a lot because I'm challenged to work with a palette that I wouldn't naturally feel inclined to use. And so I do think it's important, and I try to play games with myself a lot of the time. And if I'm ever feeling stagnant in my practice, I will go out and buy or mix different colors that I have never used together before, and that often triggers something unexpected to happen in the process. Um, so yeah, color to me it's really everything. And another thing is that color, like I often use a lot of rainbow colors together. And I often use them as underpaintings. So I'll paint like a rainbow underpainting and then layer often darker, like deep purples or blues or teals over top. And then I'll use tools to remove that thick paint to reveal the multicolored underpainting. So I always consider these rainbow hues, the combination of rainbow colors together, as representing the inner life of something. So that's why you often see the underpaintings are these multicolored expressions of that. And the colors that I gravitate towards the most are purples, deep, deep, dark violets, blues, and teals. And to me, those colors represent they represent depth. You know, those colors are very transparent as well. So they have a lot of versatility in terms of how I can work with them. If I can work with them, I can, you know, tint them with white, or I can work with them as thin glazes of color. So, but those are the three colors that I always gravitate towards. You see them in pretty much every painting of mine. They are the depths of the deep unknowns of something. And so, what other colors do I use a lot? I'm just starting to get into like some browns, like burnt siennas, burnt umbers. Um, and oh, I'm also learning a lot about color currently in the work that I'm working on, which is um, the paintings that old paintings I started painting over. Because there's already a textured surface there, I'm just using a lot of dry brushing and scumbling over top of the textured surface. So what I'm achieving is a lot of optical mixing of color. And this is a technique that I've never used before in my practice. I always typically paint on a super smooth surface. And I've always wanted the work to feel very like slick and clean, but lately I've been craving something grittier, something dirtier. And so this way of applying color over top of textured surfaces is teaching me as much about color as the very beginning of my artistic journey.
So, I just loved listening to your relationship to colour. Good for artists who are struggling with colour, and I mean, for people to criticise your use of colour, you know, it's just like I don't understand why people criticise other people's journey. Compared to what? Compared to who? It is your inner language, and it comes from an honest place within yourself. And you describing colour has just put you even more inside your work to see that other level of your paintings. And but what I wanted to ask you is, I know that you want to come to Sachaqa and learn about the natural pigments, okay? I don't know if I'm not at all responding to colour emotionally. For me, colour it brings nature into my work. My colours are separate to me. Yeah, so how is your relationship to the painting going to change? You know, the colours that you use have it has your own style, it has your own sound. So how are you going to translate, or does this new chapter of using a more natural pigments and more natural monotone palette, do you think your work's moving into the garden through your interest in bonding with materials that come from the earth? That's what colour means to me. I mean, I've got a brown from Cusco, so I go to Cusco when I use that colour. I've got some colours from the river, so I go to the river, and that river is in the painting when I'm painting it. Maybe like the black and white paintings, it taught you so much by going somewhere else. Maybe that the lessons that's going to come from restricting yourself and taking you away from those bright yellows that you're not going to get, and those bright purples and the bright pinks, and it's going to bring more of a tribal element into the work, and it be exploring different areas. Is that what you're looking for in the natural pigments, or am I projecting here?
No, you're not projecting. I mean, I think you're right. I think that, like, as I mentioned, I think it's really good to play games with yourself and to introduce limitations in the practice, because I think there's so much freedom and so much magic to be found in the within those restrictions. And The truth is, I'm always looking for ways to slow down my process and to connect more deeply with the work and and the process. And so why I'm drawn to working with natural pigments is because, I've been thinking there are a few different layers to it. During the quarantine, I realized that there was a scarcity of materials for me specifically because I use so much paint in my work. And all of the art supply stores had closed down. And even if there was paint in stock, it would take about a month to get to me by mail. So I started really thinking about or asking myself these big questions like, why am I making these giant, bold, thick oil paintings? Is that what I really need to be doing right now? So I actually didn't even make a painting for the first month and a half of quarantine because I just didn't feel like I had a real solid reason to make an oil painting. And I didn't want to waste materials. And I also realized that if the situation was worse, I don't even know how to make my own paint. I don't know what to look for. I don't know um, any part of that process. And so I'm very far removed from the materials that make the paint, from the pigments, from the land, from nature. And so I want to connect more deeply to my materials and to the earth. And I think that, like you said, like you and Ellen both talk about, when you use the pigments that you find yourself from different landscapes all over the world, when you're using that paint, you're connecting to and reactivating that place. And so again, it's for you to, it might not be as personal, or maybe it is. Maybe I'm speaking for Ellen, but from what you just said, like you're not bringing your own emotions into it. You're activating nature, I think, in by using these natural pigments in the work. And so I'm interested in seeing what would happen with my work if I, took away the ability to work with paint sculpturally and to move it around. Like oil paint takes so long to dry, but working with the natural pigments and the specific binder that you use, I think it'll challenge me to work differently. It'll slow me down, and I think it'll be much more meditative um, and so I don't know what's going to happen, and that's the beauty of it, and that's why I'm drawn to it. And I'm also interested in the subtleties in these more natural pigments and colors. And I think that, I do believe that every shift in process and every change in material feeds into all the other aspects of my practice. So in working with these natural pigments, that's in turn, of course, going to expand and um, alter and inspire the oil painting facet of my practice. So I think that the more exposure that I have to different materials and ways of working, the better off I'll be, and the more, yeah, I think it will just it'll enrich my artistic practice and and move me in new directions.
I'm only just really thinking a lot about colour through interviewing you and Ellen. You're both more abstract painters, and obviously the colour is very much connected to your process. Whereas I'm, as a visionary painter, the vision is the most important thing. So these podcasts are really helping me to understand it, as I'm sure that other artists out there can really be thinking about colour in this way. And there's never just one way of using colour. This is the exciting thing about these podcasts, that every single artist has a different relationship with colour and form and different ways of working. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what we all have in common, and what you have in common and I have in common, is this the artwork being a transformative healing process, and it being part of our journey and being part of our journey since childhood. And the plants as something that I'm called to. I'm not promoting plant medicine or want to sell plant medicine at all. I do not want to have that relationship with the plants because that's a massive responsibility. What my relationship with plant medicine is a personal journey for me to learn from the plants so that I can clean the visions and be painting from a healed place so that the paintings can transform energy ultimately, you know, and to try and clean energy through the work. Also, you know, that the journey or the struggle can be healing as well, because as I'm struggling through something, then the viewer can also, and I think that that's what your work is speaking about, is about transforming energy. So then again, we have that in common. Sachaqa's more of an exchange, really, rather than there being one teacher. It's about learning from one another, and I think that it's the exchange. It's the exchange between artists who are all on a journey together in nature and healing. So I just think I guess I wanted to make that clear for anyone who didn't understand the concept of Sachaqa.
Exciting idea I have is let's find a massive wall, like even bigger than the paintings that usually used to paint in, yeah, and we can paint it and prepare it white, so we've got to prepare the wall really well. So that's what I've realised with murals, you know, that we've done a lot of murals in Sachaqa, that you need to prepare the wall really well. That's first very important. And then we can, and then you could do a massive mural. We'll get you some ladders and find all the paint. I mean, there's amazing oranges here, oranges, yellows, which, you know, and blacks and chalk white. And also because I've been experimenting with plants, I have some other colours actually. That's what I propose, that when you come here to do something really massive and get some big brushes, and so then you can just really experiment with that, I think. And also, you know, when you're communicating to a jungle village, it's very different from communicating to people in a city or communicating in a studio. You're communicating on a wall. So I don't know, I'm just a bit excited about that idea, as to propose that to you when you do come to visit us in Sachaqa, and to get you excited about it as well, because I'll be very excited about you coming to stay.
Wow, I think that's a great idea. And I've actually never even painted a mural, so to have my first experience working in on a wall like that in San Roque would be so special. I am absolutely excited about this idea. And the beauty of it is that that can be, you know, the project that I work on over a period of time while I'm there. And I love the impermanence of it for me. Like I won't be able to bring it home, and that's perfect because it's something that I'm going to contribute to the community, to the experience that we all had there. And I love this idea so much. So I'm so glad you brought it up.
So many questions. I feel like I need to fit this question in because I think it'd be really important for the artists that will be listening to this podcast. And that is, how do you feel that artists can promote their work? You know, like, have you got any advice for artists who are trying to become professional painters, writers, musicians, whatever it is, on how they can get their voice out there? You know, any advice for social media and promotion in general for the artists that are, you know, would, you know, taking themselves seriously as full-time artists?
Well, the advice that I would give for self-promotion is, it's hard to say because I mean, I don't do anything strategically. Like my genuine love and obsession with art and learning about art and experiencing it and making it and sharing it is just so innate. It's so inherent in my personality. And I think that that's just, you know, I spend a lot of time every day on Instagram, searching for new artists and connecting with them, whether it's through like commenting or liking, following, starting up a conversation in like a direct message. But I think that what I've found really helps generate community and connect with other artists and other people is that if you establish the relationship on the internet first, of course, because many of us live all over the world and we can't physically connect. But then at some point, it is extremely helpful to solidify that relationship in person. So whenever I go traveling to any city or any country, I make sure that I look up what artists that I follow live there or what artists live there that I might want to connect with or meet for the first time. So I think that's been the greatest help for me. And, my community has been built slowly over time through these types of connections. And, I think I always make posts about my work when I'm feeling really proud of it. I never post unless I feel the energy is right. And so I think I do think that is transmitted somehow in the posts themselves. So that's the way that I approach promoting myself. Um, what else do I do? Yeah, connecting with people and doing as many interviews. Like, I think it's great to have as much press on the internet as you can. So get like a friend to interview you, or get someone that you know to interview you, or to make a short video. So as much content, like good content that you can put on the internet about yourself, the better off you'll be. Because if anyone Googles your name, there'll be something there for them to dig into. That's the advice that I have. So it's just an organic growth, I would say.
Thank you so much, Erin, for sharing so much in this amazing podcast. That'll be so helpful, I can imagine, to a lot of artists. And thank you for being part of the early stages of the Sachaqa dream. You've always been present throughout the whole Sachaqa development. You're a big part of the heart and soul of this place, and I love you dearly, and I'm in awe of how well you've done. I'm just in awe of it. I'm just like, Erin Loree, she's a famous artist. That's how I see you. To me, you're up there with the greats, and you're so honest in your work, and you've got to, be very, very proud of yourself. I'm proud of you. So at the end of every podcast, I always ask artists to share 3 words to describe your Sachaqa experience. And thank you so much. You're a star, a superstar, and I love you.
Thank you so much, Trina. That's wow. That means so much to me that you think that and then you say that. I love Sachaqa and I'm so happy that I discovered it. And I can't wait to continue our journey together as artists. And, I think you're going to be a part of my life forever. And Sachaqa will be for the foreseeable future. I always want to come back there. So, yeah, thank you for this amazing, amazing conversation. You really, really know how to dig deep, and I love it. So my 3 words to describe Sachaqa and the jungle are summoning, enchanting, and expanding. Thank you so much.